Something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, and once again, I get to come with you to craft this life that we're creating to be all that we can be. You know, at 70, I've often thought to myself, what would life be like if I wasn't still actively engaged in crafting that life? Probably after I retired at age 65, I would have just retired and wondered every day if anyone still thought of me, if I was still relevant. Was I invisible? But retirement didn't cue the end to my life. It just cued the restart of a new beginning. And I'm the one that's creating my purpose, my vision, my clarity that I get to be about every single day. And if I want to be invisible, I can choose that for a while. And if I want to be out there and helping you and helping me, I can choose that. And so I always ponder about guests and really take it very seriously, the time that we spend together and how valuable that is. For you to give me 30 minutes of your time is truly a gift. And I want to bring things to you that I think will craft your meaningful life. So to that end, today I have really a wonderful guest who is going to show us what grit and resilience looks like. Welcome, Jenny Groberg. Welcome, Jenny. So nice to have you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So you and I met by chance after we scheduled this podcast. You had reached out and wanted to know if you could be a guest, and I read through some of your stuff, and I was like, oh, absolutely. And then we were at, what was it, Women in Business event?
I think it was the Women of the Year event at the U.
Women of the Year, yes. And of course, this is your year, correct?
Yeah. We're doing big things this year.
Yeah. And I was back in 2019, and they still invite the has-beens. And so I got to be there and show up and got to meet you long before we did this podcast together. So that was a real treat. It was.
It was a treat.
When you came up and introduced yourself, I thought, you're the Jenny Groberg who is going to be on my podcast? That's awesome.
It was awesome. The Jenny Groberg. Not to be confused with the other.
Yeah, not to confuse. All right, Jenny. So let's get right into the meat of this. I know you're 40, and yet you've lived a lot of life by age 40. And I kind of like to take the listeners back to when you first started your company and how and when that happened.
We were in our last year of podiatry school. I had to move in with my parents because my husband was rotating around the country and we couldn't afford his expenses and my expenses. And I knew I had to work. I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and I didn't have a partner to support me or to take care, trade off with the childcare. So I saw a job posting for a restaurant in Park City, and they needed an accountant. And so I drove up there, interviewed. I was positive I could convince him to let me work from home. I'd worked remotely as a CFO for a company in Salt Lake during med school, and I didn't get the job. And I was absolutely devastated. And I thought, I've got to do something here. And that is when I began my own company. So I decided, all right, I will consult with other companies. I will train them on how to formulate the best accounting software and procedures that they can. And then I would train either their staff or themselves. And then more often than not, they would say, hey, Jen, why don't you just do it? And business owners will make more money when they can focus on actually running their business, right? Yeah. Instead of doing their accounting. And so that's kind of how things started.
Yeah, it was a change. It was a game changer in my business when I outsourced my CFO. Yeah. And then the whole accounting world went outside of my company, and it was a game changer and allowed me to focus on that. So the actual nature and the name of the company that you started,
Is Booksmarts Accounting and Bookkeeping.
Booksmarts Accounting and Bookkeeping. Okay. And what kind of background did you have for that? Do you have an accounting degree? What do you have?
So I have a degree in finance,
Ah,
and my path just led me to do some accounting work. I've done CFO work, and then did that for a few years, and then just began consulting. And then from there, I would work with CPAs and learned the industry and learned, how to do just about everything. And over the years, I've hired data entry, I've hired a team of accountants, we have a team of CPAs. And so, if we can pretty much handle any accounting problem, or, we often work as an accounting department for companies. If they have a hard time staffing or keeping people trained, then they can outsource to us. We can be a support, or if it's a small company, we can be their bookkeeper. So we kind of can approach the whole gamut.
so as I look at that, and your husband at that time was in med school, goes on to residency, then life looks pretty good. He's a doctor now. You have your own company. The dough's rolling in. And Jenny, what's your life looking like at that point?
My goal actually was, once we finally finished however many years of school we had, my number one goal was to get out of debt. And I feel like businesses
Yeah.
that actually do that are much more successful, especially
Yep.
when we have recessions. So my number one goal was, we're paying this off. Kept the exact same lifestyle and didn't buy any new cars, any new furniture, no trips, and we got our debt paid off. And then
That
from
is
there,
the
life,
number one thing.
yeah, and life was good. We just had our fifth child. I'm busy
You
with
have
my.
5 children?
I do. I have 5 kids.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, 2 girls and 3 boys, ranging from 8 to 18.
Wow. The whole
So,
gamut.
yeah. So life was busy. Lots of sports, lots of church activities, lots of community activities. Life was good.
Yeah. But then I think what makes the story a little twisted is that something happened that completely changed the trajectory of your life.
Up until that point, I kind of thrived on my output. And I think I was raised to feel some value in what I produced, you
Yeah.
know. Um, I loved to run. I would wake up early, I would lift weights, I would trail run. I was, doing races. I was thriving on my output. How much can I get done? I could wake up, I could
Yeah.
stay up late, I could do all kinds of things. And then one night I was getting ready for bed, going about my nighttime routine, and I jumped up on my bathroom counter to grab a cream out of the cupboard, and I pulled it down and I slipped. I didn't know there was water on the counter. And I slipped back and I hit the floor, and it was a tile floor, and I don't know that I could have hit it any harder. Everybody in the house heard it, and I
Oh,
had no idea how life altering and catastrophic that fall would be.
wow. Yeah, I think at that moment you just think, oh, that was a horrible fall, but I'm still alive. I can move my toes. I didn't break my back.
I'm awake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm awake. I didn't pass out. Okay, life is good. And
Mhm.
I'm going to just recover from this like everything else
It's true. We had a
because I can tell you're a doer.
Yeah, I am a
Yeah.
doer. We had a community fun run the next day. It was Memorial Day, 2018. And I went to stand up to go to the fun run, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't stand up. And I had to get back in bed. And that was the beginning of my recovery. Actually, that was the beginning of my
Your
of
new
ev-
life.
of my new life. Yeah.
So, exactly what was the injury that happened to your head?
So I didn't really understand what it was. And because I have a family of healthcare providers, everyone thinks, yeah, don't go to the hospital. You're fine. It's not that big of a deal. I sustained a traumatic brain injury, And I did not understand how bad it was. And so 2 weeks after that fall, I'm like, okay, I can handle my life. I'm going to be fine. This is okay. And I got another bump to the back of my head, and that was game over. It was just, I bent over to grab something, and there was a stroller, and I came up under the stroller, and it was padded too, just a little ding in the back of my head. And I immediately had numbness up my arms, up my legs. My heart rate, couldn't sustain my heart rate, my body temperature, sounds, my eyes were wonky. So everything went downhill.
So tell me, how life-changing was this for you?
After I had that initial fall, I just kept thinking, okay, I can't live like this. This is so horrible. And I thought, okay, I just have to make it a week. If I can just make it through a week, then I'll be better. And then that week turned into 2 weeks, 2 months, and 2 years. But it was absolutely life-changing. It completely turned my world upside down. Every morning, it felt like I was just getting beat over the head. In order to get out of bed, my husband would bring me a Diet Coke and a few Excedrin just to give me the bump to be able to stand up. But it felt like I had been on the worst ride at an amusement park and just beat to heck. I was dizzy. I was nauseated. I didn't have my bearings. I had no energy. And then, my nervous system, my eyes, my ears, everything was off. So.
And as I think this, you probably already had your 5 children by then.
Yeah, I did. I had a 2-year-old that would escape from the house that I could not keep track of. And it was a real struggle.
Yeah.
Just the laundry, the meals, the trying to go to the grocery store was impossible. All the stimulation, it was impossible.
I can't even imagine what kind of just, there's frustration, there's anger at your situation, there's hopelessness, helplessness. And as a doer myself, who got my worth from doing, I just don't know how I would have coped with that. And not being able to care for my children, not being able to care for my company, not being able to support my husband, and everything was turned toward you. How were you at receiving the help?
I don't think I asked for help. So, it's the type of thing that I had a neighbor call my sister in Arizona and say, "Hey, she's not okay. You need to call your family." Like I said, I kept thinking I'm going to get better. It's not something that I was really public about. I don't know that anybody knew the extreme suffering. And you're right, Mary, all those things that made me who I was, my business, my children, my ability to accomplish things, everything was stripped from me. It was immense suffering. Just honestly, after everything, all I wanted to do was to be able to be a mom and care for my kids. I would have happily given up my business, my right arm, and my left arm to be better.
Yeah. How it's crazy how in an instant a life can change. And I'm sure 1,000 times you thought, if I could have just had that moment, just that one moment back when I made the decision to jump on that counter.
We all make decisions every day. And I'm grateful it wasn't me being crazy skiing. I love to ski. Or I'm grateful I didn't have an accident running or driving, because those are kinds of things that you look back and say, I should have been smarter. Now, to be fair, I could have been smarter getting up on my counter, but that was just that was a moment that I felt like was supposed to happen to make me who I am. And I would rather that not be the case, but we all have things that happen to us or that we create, and it is our refining moment, and we can try to avoid it. We can try to pretend it's not happening, or we can just dig really deep and plow forward and do the best we can with it, and I do feel like that is the test in what makes us who we are. And I can say that now that I'm emerging on the other end.
How long has it been since your accident?
It's been over 5 years.
Wow. Okay, so at what point did you feel like you were able to step back just enough to ask the question, instead of, why is this happening to me, of, how is this happening for me? And what is the lesson here? At what point were you able to step back and begin to look at it that way?
That is a good question. I think
because clearly you've made that shift.
Yeah. I had everybody telling me, you just have to accept where you're at, Jen. And I never did. Right. They would, we have a neighbor who lost his leg. And my husband would say, hey, Kelly lost his leg. He can manage. And I said, I cannot manage like this. This is unmanageable. This is no quality of life. I cannot live like this the rest of my life. I was so miserable. And the thing is, Mary, people would probably say, well, I see you doing stuff. And that's the thing. I would save up all my energy. I would go do something, or I would go to a school play, or I would get to the grocery store. And then I would get home and just completely melt, and I had no control over it. No mind over matter could fix my brain. It just couldn't. It took time and tons of therapy. And I even had my dad give me a psychological exam. He's a psychologist, to see, is this in her head? Is she just wanting this? And no, I do not want that life. And he's like, oh, you passed. Even my parents, I don't feel like anybody understands brain injuries. They just don't. And it's something where I look pretty much okay. But it is horrific. And I think my husband probably told me daily, this is okay. We're going to get through this. He's an optimist, and I needed that. And he would just say, hey, we still have you, and this could be you. And he would give me another example. Mm-hmm. I probably heard weekly, hey, this could be worse. And Mary, I know it could have been worse. I see people who suffer with more than I have. But it was a lot. And I feel like at the time I knew it was supposed to be, and I knew it was my refining fire, and I knew that I would be stronger and better from it. I just didn't know how long that path would take. Right. I just wish I could have sped it up. If I would have known, hey, it's going to be 5 years, before you start doing better, I don't think I would have made it.
Right. I'm sure you thought every day, oh, I'm sure by Christmas this will all be behind me.
For sure.
I'm sure by summer it'll all be behind me.
Yep. I just got to make it up.
Yeah. So as you look at these situations, Jenny, and the accident, the traumaticness of it, the brain injury, not a lot of people have brain injuries. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not a lot. Why me? And then the process of going through the recovery, and now on the opposite end, looking back, what would you say are the greatest lessons that were there for you? And how are you different now?
So I would say that a really important lesson I have learned is the compounding effect of marginal gains. And what that means is 1% improvement here or 1% improvement here over the long game and adds up to be big gains, right? So if you take 1.01 to the power of 365, so you have a 1% change every day, over the course of the year, that adds up to be a 37% gain. It's a concept discussed in Atomic Habits by James Clear. And if you have a 1% decrease every day in your health or mental ability or whatever, so you would do 0.99 to the power of 365, over the course of the year, you end up almost at 1%, meaning you're pretty much at a zero.
Right.
So I had one guy tell me, because with the brain injury, I couldn't be on a computer. I just had headaches that would rock my world. And I could barely function. I couldn't read. I couldn't scan the internet. So it limited my ability to find paths that might help me to recover. But I would try everything. I've tried cognitive FX in Provo. I've tried vision therapy. I've worked with a PT in Park City who deals with the ski team and brain injuries and concussions. And the recovery, everything was done so incrementally. But I thought if I can have a 1% or a 5% gain on this therapy, then that's something. If I can try this therapy and have a 5% improvement, I'm hoping for 100. But every therapy, realistically, it's like, okay, even if it's a 5% increase, those add up. Those are significant. And I think for all of us in whatever problems we're facing, if we can just plow forward and just shoot for 1%, 1% feels attainable, right? Like that feels within our grasp on what we can do. And so that was my goal, and it has paid off. And all those little things have amassed to be a big thing.
So in this 1% gain, I started thinking about the different things in my life that I work on, even at my age still. And I kind of had set this mindset to, as long as I only have a 1% loss every year for the rest of my life, when will I be like a vegetable, and probably somewhere around 105 or something. But I also have things that I'm thinking, I don't see this being part of my life forever. And if I can just make a 1% gain, and one of the things that comes to my mind is my arthritis. And they don't have a cure for arthritis. And yet nearly every mature adult suffers with a little bit of it, and some of us suffer with a lot. But I'm trying everything that I can find. And if I can just make 1% gain this year, instead of a 1% loss, what a better thing that is. So I love that concept. Jenny, you've written a book about all of this, and I love the title of it. And you've entitled it Essentialism. Is that right?
No, it's not my book. Actually, Essentialism was a book I read that talks about, I wish I'd written it, Mary. Essentialism is a book that talks about how if something is not absolutely necessary, say no. So with me, I would push forward and be like, okay, I can do this. And it'll be fine. And then I would crash. And then I would push forward, and then I would crash. And it was a really up and down pathway for 3 years. Sometimes my crashes would be a few days, and I would just have to really rest and recoup. And then I'd come out of it and plow forward, and then come to a screeching halt, and then not be able to do anything again. Yeah. And so I had a neuropsychiatrist tell me, hey, Jen, just go, and your brain will catch up, because my body is able, but my brain is not. And so that's what I was doing. I was just doing this horrible up and down cycle. And after a few years, I finally realized, okay, I've got to go to bed, and I've got to get my sleep. That's the most important thing for my healing. I have to make sure I get on my bike every morning and do the things that I know I have to do. I have quite a few things that I need to accomplish in a day just to keep my recovery moving forward. And one of those is this physical therapist is just like, Jen, you just got to get on your bike. Started with my heart rate at 75, and I did that 30 minutes a day for a week. And then I could move up to 80, and I could move up to 85, right? And so everything has been so slow and intentional. in trying to recover. But I had a doctor tell me, Jen, you got to give up 5 things. The way you're going, things aren't going so great. You're still very symptomatic. You got to give up 5 things. And I thought, there's no way I can give up 5 things. I've already given up so many things. So I looked at my life and I'm like, okay, I can't help whatsoever with my son's soccer team. I need to give up my business. I need to give up serving in my church. There were a few things that I thought, okay, like I have to kind of go to the bare bones here. And that was horrible for me. It really was, because even though they were small things, they still made me feel like I was contributing and helping in some way. And I understand that those were important, and it's okay. Not everybody can't give everything all the time. And I have a lot more compassion for other people who can't do things. And I can help here and I can help there, and we take turns helping each other, right? And so the concept of the book Essentialism is such that if it's not an absolute yes, it's a no. So if you're diverting all of your attention in so many different ways, then you're not necessarily going to be good at anything. Let's say you're incredible, and then you start volunteering on this thing, and then you're helping at this thing. Your attention is so diversified that you're not really great at anything anymore, right?
Did someone send you a note about Mary and that's her big problem and that you're supposed to talk about this?
I know, it's everybody's problem, right? And it's
right?
Like, hey, cool, you like me, you want me to help with that? Yeah, I'm awesome. I can totally do that. And then we end up, overcommitting to so many things that we're not really good at anything. And so since my doctor said that, and then I came across this book on essentialism, it's really kind of taught me stay focused. Pick the very most important things, and that's where you spend your energy. And the most important thing I can do is be a mom. And I know that, and I'm grateful that I haven't been able to do certain things for my family. And my sweet husband would say, Jenny, this is a learning opportunity for our whole family. We all can learn from this. They picked up what I couldn't do. And it was good for my kids. I felt so much guilt. I felt guilt all the time. And he's just like, no, this is good for me. This is good for us. We can do this. And, life is not about our trips, and life is not about just playing and partying and going to concerts and being entertained. Life is about our relationships. It is about helping each other. And, I've heard some people be like, man, my parents got to retirement and then my mom got sick and my dad lost his life. And it's like, no, that is life. Life is helping each other. Life is proving what you're made of. Life is helping your spouse or your parent, through whatever they're going through. And that is meaningful, Mary. That is what brings joy, is that service and loving those around us. That is what it's about.
In this quest that I have had, I am on, but I'm altering it to not become irrelevant or invisible or contributing member of society, to have my life have meaning at this point. I think I have done exactly what you're talking about. Anyone who needs help, I think there's a sign outside my door that says, if you need something, call Mary. She's retired.
Mary, I could use some food. I hear you're great.
And so when I was in Africa, and I just got back from Kenya, that's one of the lessons I brought home as I pondered what my lessons were. And there were a lot of philanthropic and humanitarian lessons. But the greatest lesson that I brought home was that I was no longer going to fit the things that were important to me into my calendar. And by that, I mean, John and I every week would look at my calendar and I would say, well, let's do this day and this day. I'm busy the rest of the time. And instead to flip that and to say, what can we do together? And where do we want to put those? And then fill in the other spots with the other stuff. I want to flip flop my life. And last night I had just gotten home from Kenya, and my daughter called and said, Mom, can we come bring over some burger and fries just to say hi to you? And I was so exhausted. And I'm like, I wanted to get a couple loads of laundry in before I collapsed. And I started thinking about all this agenda that I had going on. And then I realized, wait a minute, you made a commitment to yourself. And so I said, absolutely, I'd love to see you. I had missed her so much, and my grandson, who's 5, and even my son-in-law, we have the best relationship. They came over just for an hour, but how my life was different because I stopped and just took time for them. Mm-hmm. I think this lesson you're teaching today, Jenny, is something that's so profound for all of us. And in every walk of life, we need this. So I always tell my guests, and I should have warned you about this, but I didn't. I ask for the Post-it note moment. And that is one of the things that helped me shift my life and change my life was a simple Post-it note that I put on my mirror and read every single day for 10 years. And it was simply, what would I do today if I were no longer afraid? And through that Post-it note, I began to think about my life and the being afraid to be out there. And I began to shift and to be who I truly am. So I ask each guest, what would be your Post-it note that you would ask my listeners to put on their mirror this week? The lesson that you've learned that would shift them to the lessons you've learned.
So my Post-it note would say, why not me? I think women have a scarcity mindset. I think that they feel afraid. They feel like they're not good enough. They feel like they're not skinny enough or not smart enough, or they've been moms, so therefore they can't do X, Y, and Z. My mom, my whole life has taught me, why not you? And as I was going through my recovery, I knew in my soul, Mary, I knew that I was going to get better. And that's why the whole time I thought, okay, I can endure a week. And then it was like, okay, I can make it a month. I cannot endure this for more than a month. And luckily, I didn't know how long that would take, right? But I knew it was God encouraging me. There is more here. You can get through this. And whatever your higher power is, you hold tight to that. And I did. I held so fast to that. And I knew that God loved me. And I knew that this was something that I would get through. And, people talk about how you can be happy, even amidst the worst suffering. I don't believe that. I really did try so hard to be happy. And I did have moments when I was with my family where I'm like, okay, this is joy. But I think that it's good sometimes to suffer. And I think sometimes it's good to have really, really horrible things because you can appreciate things so much more. I am so grateful that I can make dinner, and I'm grateful I can go to the grocery store, and I'm grateful that I can take care of my mom. She's fighting terminal cancer, and it's stage 4, and it's horrible. And I am so grateful that I have the energy to care for her and to help her and to cheer her on. And I say, Mom, why not you? You don't know. They say it's going to look like this, but you just don't know. And you just have to fight. So whatever your fight looks like, I would say you dig deep, you duck your head, you focus on the essential things in your life, the most important things. And it's typically your family and your relationships. For me, that is what is most important to me. It is amazing to have my business. And I'm so excited that I still have that. And I've been able to re-enter and to lead and to help the women on my staff and to employ more people. Yeah. But I tell them too, why not you? Let's do this together. Let's give back. And we are trying really hard to do that.
Yeah. So for all of my listeners who are intently committed to being the very best version of themselves, to crafting a meaningful life, those are Jenny's lessons for you today. Why not you? Why not you? You, more than anyone else, have the ability to do this. And the way we get there is what she talked about with essentialism. Eliminate those things that are not critical in your life, that don't bring you joy, that don't create the best version of you, that are just hanging on you. And then we get to craft our meaningful life and be full of joy. When I look at you, Jenny, I see joy. I see peace and happiness. And I know 5 years ago and even a year ago, you didn't know if that was going to be yours.
Yeah.
But now it is.
I knew it was. I just didn't know how long it was going to take.
Yeah.
But Mary, I was willing to put in whatever I had to do. Whatever it takes, I will fight and I will come out on the other side. Absolutely.
So we've included at the end of this podcast the links to Jenny's website, as well as a little bit more information. You can reach out, you can follow her on social media and see what this dynamo has relearned as she's recrafted her meaningful life. Thanks for being with me. Jenny, thanks for coming on with us. And we look forward to next week when we can once again focus on crafting our meaningful life. Namaste.
Crafting a Meaningful Life.